Welcome back, everybody. We're going to get into part two of Napoleon's first campaign. I did the first part of this a little while back, and now I'm going to jump into the second part. I'm going to split it into two. Since it's 30 minutes long, I'll do the first 15 or so minutes in one part, and then the last bit in another part. So it'll be split into two, but let's go ahead and jump into it. Napoleon's first campaign, part two.
Revolutionary Wars, a young French general took charge of a ragged, demoralized army in northern Italy. It was his first command. Many expected him to fail. Instead, in just 1 month, he won his first brilliant campaign. With astonishing self-confidence, boldness and energy, he led his army to victory after victory, transforming the war in Europe, winning praise from a grateful republic, and forging a legend. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte's first campaign, and the dawn of a new age. May 1796. The French Revolutionary Wars have entered their 5th year. And on what most consider to be a secondary front, there has been a stunning development. A 26-year-old general of the French Republic, Napoleon Bonaparte, has waged a lightning campaign across northern Italy, defeating the Kingdom of Piedmont-Sardinia and driving the Austrians across Lombardy. 2,000 Austrian troops.
You've got to just absolutely love those old school hats.
Troops remain holed up in Milan's citadel, but they cannot prevent his triumphal entry into the city on the 15th of May. Now the French general holds court at the Palazzo Serbelloni, issuing decrees on behalf of the Directory in Paris, while his troops enjoy several days' rest. Lombardy is to be reorganized as a French client state, known as the Lombardic Republic. Political and economic reforms sweep away the old Austrian state, to the delight of Italian intellectuals in cities like Milan. But the French also demand 20 million francs to help pay for the war, while their troops requisition vast quantities of food, horses, cattle, and boots.
Yeah, a lot of times this is referred to as like the expansion of the French Revolution, but that's really sort of giving it more credit than it probably deserves. The ideals of the French Revolution aren't just sweeping through all of these places around France, and they are, overthrowing the old systems and going to this new revolutionary world. France is sort of forcing it upon them, and it's not even, basically they're trading out former leaders for Napoleon. And so even today, when it's talked about, it's referred to a lot as the expansion of like quote unquote French ideals. And I feel like that's really sort of bending the rhetorical meaning there.
Most inflammatory are their attacks on the property and dignity of the Catholic Church, which enrage Italian priests and peasants, and are a gift to anti-French propagandists. On the 23rd of May, as Napoleon's troops set off in pursuit of the Austrians, revolt breaks out in Pavia. The next day, there are riots in Milan. Napoleon races back to the city, where order is soon restored. But on the road to Pavia, at Binasco, he encounters 1,000 armed rebels. Colonel Lannes' grenadiers rout the peasants, killing 100 and burning the village. A terrible example, which will be effective, Napoleon writes.
And again, we talk about this in reference to Spain as well. There's a very fine line there in which you are maintaining order versus you are sort of galvanizing the rebellion. And they really struggle with it in Spain.
Pavia is retaken the next day with little opposition. A score of ringleaders, including several priests, are shot. Hundreds of hostages are taken from prominent local families to ensure future cooperation. Napoleon resumes his advance east. His army now organized into 4 divisions: Kilmain's advance guard, Augereau, Massena, and Serrurier. General Berlioz's Austrian army holds the line of the Mincio River, with Lake Garda on his right and the great fortress of Mantua on his left. This, together with the fortresses at Peschiera, Verona, and Lagnago, forms the famous quadrilateral, 4 bastions that cement Austria's grip on northern Italy. But once more, Beaulieu can't get a read on Napoleon's movements. He scatters his troops, trying to defend 4 potential crossing points, and is further distracted by fake preparations to cross Lake Garda by boat. In fact, Napoleon has decided to cross the Mincio at Borgetto, and when Kilmain's advance guard arrives, they find the bridge defended by a single battalion of infantry and handful of hussars.
This is, Napoleon's brilliance certainly shines here. The movement of a vast number of troops, but they're not all moving together. They're separated into individual groups. They're able to move more quickly. They're able to forage as they go. And again, if you're watching this from an enemy's perspective, it's really hard to get a read on where everybody's going, because not everybody's going to the same place until the exact moment that they do. They're all kind of going their own ways and spreading out and moving in different directions until they're not. And so when you try to defend that, you don't know where they're going to coalesce. And so you're kind of trying to defend everything. And what ends up happening is you're sort of defending nothing, because everything is so, smallly defended that it's really not any real resistance.
Austrians are soon driven back, but a sudden counterattack nearly bags General Bonaparte himself. A possibly dramatized account has him hopping over fences with one boot on to evade the hussars. This lucky escape leads to the formation of an elite cavalry detachment to act as Napoleon's personal escort. They are named the Compagnie des Guides à Cheval. Their commander is a young cavalry captain named Jean-Baptiste Bessières. In time, this unit will become the famous Chasseurs à Cheval of the Imperial Guard, the Emperor's ever-present bodyguard on campaign. This video is sponsored by Enlisted, the unique World War II first-person shooter, in which you lead your squad into battle in a Taken by surprise by the crossing at Borgetto, Beaulieu begins a withdrawal to a new defensive line in the Adige Valley. However, at Mantua, he leaves behind a reinforced garrison, well supplied and ready to withstand a siege of at least 2 months. Napoleon cannot bypass Mantua. Its garrison is too powerful. But the fortress city will be a tough nut to crack. Its old walls surrounded on 3 sides by a lake and on the other by malarial marshland. The most unhealthy place in Italy, Napoleon tells the Directory.
Its natural defenses are pretty well set up. That was a good place to build that thing. You've got the lake surrounding it. You've got what essentially is, moats around it. I mean, they're not built moats, but they effectively are acting that way. You have water going up into the actual fort. It's a good setup.
His biggest problem is his lack of heavy siege artillery. Most of these guns are in Milan, bombarding the Austrians, still holed up in the citadel. More guns were supposed to arrive by sea, but have been intercepted by British warships, commanded by a certain Commodore Horatio Nelson. Since April,
Yeah, I swear I know that name from somewhere.
Napoleon has launched 3 successful offensives, marched more than 200 miles, and won 10 battles. But finally, outside the walls of Mantua, he is brought to a halt. And the demands on his limited force are growing. He must maintain the siege of Mantua, even though its guns outnumber his own and no direct assault can be made. He must protect his lines of communication back to France and guard against further revolt in Lombardy. And he must be ready to face the Austrians, who are receiving reinforcements from Germany and will soon counterattack.
Yeah, and so he's already done more than he was expected to do, but this is where two things. One, this is sort of where Napoleon shines in these spots where you're like, man, this looks rough. You may have overextended yourself a little bit. He always just, not always, eventually it'll come to bite him, but he really comes up with his best stuff in these situations. But also, this is where having complete control of the French state later on is such a huge benefit to him, because then he can sort of do whatever he wants here. He can, force resupply. He can force new troops. It's a totally different situation that he's working with. Whereas right now, he sort of has what he has and is trying to make the best of it. Even his extra guns got intercepted. So, it's one of the things that later on will be different and play into his benefit. But normally, this is where Napoleon, sort of makes his bones.
To add to his problems, the French Directory demands that he lead an expedition to central and southern Italy. He's to threaten military occupation unless these states cough up huge sums to help fund the French war effort. Napoleon vehemently opposes the idea.
Yeah, okay, you got it. I'll just go all the way down to the southern tip of Italy with this, ragtag group of troops that was nothing before I got here. Yeah, that sounds good.
Marching troops the length of Italy in high summer, he warns, will end in sickness and death. Fortunately, strong words alone persuade Naples to sign an armistice. And in the end, Napoleon doesn't even have to go as far as Rome. The French march through the Duchy of Modena, the Papal States, and the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, raising more than 40 million francs in tribute from states that are powerless to resist. Napoleon dines in Florence with the Grand Duke before returning to Milan. There he is reunited with his wife, Josephine, who's arrived from Paris, discreetly accompanied by her new lover. Napoleon does not linger in Milan. Its citadel has finally fallen, freeing up his siege guns. His troops have seized another 150 guns from the forts of central Italy. Napoleon can now make serious plans to take Mantua, and he has no time to lose. In the Tyrol, the reinforced Austrian army is beginning to stir, under a new commander. Berlioz is gone. Now, 72-year-old Field Marshal Count von Wurmser is in command. A courageous cavalryman, vigorous beyond his years, and determined to avenge Austrian defeats in Italy.
Good luck.
Since crossing the Mincio, Napoleon has reorganized and redeployed his forces. General Massena's division is near Rivoli, watching the road to the Tyrol. 2 of his brigades, under General Sorre, are at Salo, watching the western side of Lake Garda.
It's so weird to see Massena called general, or, it's just weird.
General Despinois' division is in support at Peschiera. General Augereau's division is around Legnago, watching the eastern approaches, while Kilmain's cavalry mounts patrols. General Serrurier's division carries out the siege of Mantua itself. But Napoleon's hopes for a rapid conclusion to the siege are in vain. The Austrian garrison conducts a skillful and active defense, raiding French entrenchments and seizing supplies. Murat, recently promoted to brigadier general, plans to lead a group of men in Austrian uniform across the lake at night to take the guards by surprise. But the operation's abandoned when the water level suddenly drops. The French step up their bombardment of the city, firing more than 1,000 cannonballs and mortar shells in one 6-hour period. Mantua is being battered to pieces, but its walls are not yet breached. Napoleon is out of time. Field Marshal Wurmser is finally marching to Mantua's aid. He has divided his army into 4 columns. 2 central columns are advancing down the Adige Valley directly towards Mantua. Another column to the east is making a wide flanking march, while a 4th column, under General Kostanovic, advances down the western shore of Lake Garda, planning to seize Brescia and cut Napoleon's line of retreat. Massena comes under heavy attack and, severely outnumbered, abandons Rivoli and begins a fighting retreat. As soon as the news reaches Napoleon, he races to Castelnuovo, ordering Augereau, Despinois and Kilmain to join him as fast as possible. But suddenly, it is Kostanovic's column that's emerging as the greatest threat. General Sorre's troops at Salo are heavily outnumbered.
Yeah, this is normally what Napoleon's good at. You're popping up in different direction, and it's confusing. It's confusing the enemy, where they don't know really what's going on or where exactly you're trying to get at. So you kind of have them just scrambling around. This is kind of his thing.
They put up a stiff resistance, but are forced to withdraw. The next day, Austrian troops surprise the French at Brescia. They take the town, as well as an army hospital containing 2,000 French sick and wounded. Even Napoleon's wife, Josephine, en route to Brescia, is nearly captured in the chaos. Wurmser has wrong-footed Napoleon. Already outnumbered, he's lost 5,000 casualties. His left flank is in tatters, and there's a real possibility he may be encircled. It's the greatest crisis he has faced as an army commander, and will force him to make an agonizing decision. On the 31st of July, after 2 months of blood, sweat and sacrifice, General Serrurier is ordered to abandon the siege of Mantua. He is to send 2 of his brigades to reinforce Massena and Augereau, and withdraw with the rest of his troops to guard the army's line of retreat. 179 guns, plus ammunition and supplies which cannot be moved, are to be buried or tipped into the marshes. Napoleon needs every man he can get, because in the midst of the crisis, he has spotted an opportunity. Kostanovic's advance has caught him off guard, but Lake Garda separates him from the rest of the Austrian army. Napoleon
Yeah, you really need the troops at Mantua to start doing something here. If you're the Austrians, you need some sort of threat in the rear here to keep Napoleon from jumping head first here and basically keeping your forces split in two. Not great that there's a lake there. Not good. It seems like it was good planning initially, just, bad move with the lake being there. Okay, we'll probably go ahead and stop it right here, and I will pick up with the second half of it in the next video. Remember, before you go, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I'll put the link to the Discord in the description box down below, and I will see you all in the next one.